Good afternoon, morning, or evening. My name is Maria Celeste Resendez House.
And I'm Cutter Ryan Edgar. We are students taking Animal Biology 1402 here at Texas Tech University. Our lab portion of this class was based around learning about animal biology, observations, and handling of actual animals. This animal in particular being the Madagascar hissing cockroach. In our lab, we were directed to design and run a long-term scientific experiment over a span of about a month involving these animals. After pondering a lot of ideas for what exactly we could test, we decided to test the frequency of hisses in male Madagascar hissing cockroaches versus their female counterparts. We are here today to present to you our testing process and findings from this experiment, starting with our object and hypothesis. The objective of our experiment was to explore the question, will male Madagascar hissing cockroaches produce a disturbance hiss at a greater frequency than the female of the same species? And through a long-term experiment, find a statistically significant answer. Our starting hypothesis was that males would hiss more frequency than females due to the fact that males are more territorial and aggressive. Then we set out on our mission to prove our working theory.
However, before we jump into our procedures, let's first dive into some background information about the Madagascar hissing cockroach, what they are, how, and why these animals hiss. The Madagascar hissing cockroach hails from the island of Madagascar, which is just off the coast of Africa. These creatures dwell on the forest floor, are invertebrates, are nocturnal, live in colonies, usually weigh about 0.8 ounces, are normally 2 to 3 inches long, and are detrivores, meaning that they feed on dead organic matter like fallen leaves. And according to National Geographic, Madagascar hissing cockroaches are shiny brown, oval-shaped, with no wings and a single pair of antennae, pictured for you here. So now that we know a little bit about the Madagascar hissing cockroach, let's get into their namesake and a little bit of anatomy. These creatures produce a hissing sound, similar to the pronunciation of the 19th letter of the English alphabet, S, displayed for you here. The cockroaches produce this noise by rapidly expelling air from the pair of spiracles on the first abdominal segment. The spiracles are openings on the side of the cockroach's body connected to a series of tubes that bring oxygen into the body as well as carry carbon dioxide out. This function is unique to Madagascar hissing cockroaches because all insects have spiracles for respiration, but Madagascar hissing cockroaches use them both for respiration and sound production, while other sound-producing insects, such as crickets, produce sound by rubbing two body parts together.
Thank you for such a wonderful explanation, Maria. Now that we know how these animals produce their significant hissing sound, let's find out the reason why. A common misconception among the general public is that only males are able to produce this hissing noise. And this is used when fighting or for dominance over other males. This is simply not true. Both males and female Madagascar hissing cockroaches can produce a hissing sound. The type of hiss is called the disturbance hiss. As the name suggests, it is produced when the cockroach is feeling disturbed by something. It is like a warning hiss. There are two other types of hisses, for a total of 3 different types. One other hiss is referred to as a female attracting hiss and is used by the male Madagascar hissing cockroach to attract a potential mate. The third type of hiss is called the aggression or fighting hiss, and this is used when males are competing for dominance, territory, or a mate. For the purpose of our experiment, we aim to produce disturbance hisses, since it is the only type of hiss that both males and females can produce to make sure that we observe only disturbance hisses. Our cockroaches were separated and isolated for the full duration of the experiment.
Thank you so much for that very detailed explanation, Cutter. Now that you know about the Madagascar hissing cockroach and its hissing, we can get into the details of our experiment. We designed our experiment We designed our experiment to be run by the two of us in the span of the allotted 10-minute period we were given at the beginning of each lab period. The procedure is as follows. When preparing this lab, you must first gather the necessary materials. First, you need to obtain 2 observation trays to put each cockroach in order to record the frequency of the hisses. You also need a timer. That timer is to be set exactly to 5 minutes. Then, you will carefully retrieve a Madagascar hissing cockroach out of the colony as provided by your lab professor and place the male/female into one of the observation trays. Next, you will retrieve another cockroach that is the opposite gender of the cockroach you already retrieved, and place that cockroach in the remaining empty observation tray. Then, each experiment administrator will test and observe one of the 2 cockroaches. At the start of the timer, each member of the lab should administer one slight downward push using their finger to the upper abdomen of the Madagascar hissing cockroach, and do the same at the start of each minute during this 5-minute time testing period. Each member of the group should only touch their Madagascar hissing cockroach a total of 5 times during the testing period. And remember to keep your recorded number of hisses separate by each gender.
Next, we will be discussing our results. After 4 trials of testing, this graph here shows the total number of hisses recorded per trial and overall. As you can see, according to the raw data averages, it is very obvious that during our experiment, the males did hiss more frequently than the females. However, the big question is, are our results also statistically accurate? Starting with the results of our t-test. To perform an accurate t-test, we first need to find the degrees of freedom. The formula to find the degrees of freedom is n-1. Since we took 20 recorded results overall, our degree of freedom is 19, 20 minus 1. The t-table value at 19 degrees of freedom and 0.05 significance level for our one-tailed hypothesis test is 1.73. Our t-value calculated was 1.72, while our p-value calculated was 0.047, which is less than 0.05. Therefore, our results are significant. With the 96% accuracy, so we failed to reject, aka accepted our hypothesis. Therefore, we can say that with a 96% accuracy that male Madagascar hissing cockroaches produce disturbances more frequently than female Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
This is the t-table for that experiment. So as you can see, with 19 degrees of freedom and a 0.5 significance level for our one-tailed hypothesis, that comes out to, like we said, 1.73. So now let's jump into our discussion. We have conclusive results. However, we realized that we could definitely improve our experiment in many ways. Firstly, our p-value, while technically significant, is very close to being not significant. We were worried about this initially because we noticed a large outlier in our raw data, which can cause the values to be skewed. One way to avoid this is to run more trials of the experiment, because the more normal trials we have with no outliers, the less effect that one outlier has on the overall data. Also, the more repeatable the experiment, the more accurate the results. Also, we realize that we are handling cockroaches that are not wild and are very used to being handled. A great way to improve these findings would be to travel to Madagascar and test wild cockroaches. That way, we can make sure our data is not being impacted by the fact that these animals have been handled frequently, and that our data can actually be applied to the entire species as a whole.
What else does this data mean for Madagascar hissing cockroaches as a species? One implication of our findings could be that male Madagascar hissing cockroaches have a higher survival rate in the wild, due to them being more inclined to hiss when threatened. Our data can also support more biological difference, like a higher amount of a certain hormone being present in males and females. As we said earlier, we personally thought that they might have higher levels of testosterone because the males tended to be more aggressive. And these are our works cited. Thank you again for listening to our presentation.